Scotland will look to stop and inform England at Murrayfield. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. After their respective performances of last week, it feels like a big ask, honestly, for Scotland to knock England over in this one. It is possible. They are, capable of producing a performance, and we've seen that before. But you look at the players in that squad. You look at how those players are doing for their clubs, be it Bath or Glasgow especially, and you think this Scotland team should be well beyond just producing the odd performance. That they should be genuine contenders for this competition. And looking at last week's performance and results, nobody is calling them contenders at this point. So there's I think big question marks about. Not necessarily about the players, honestly. A lot of times you look at a squad like this and you will look at the players and think, how come they're performing so poorly? And, why can't they, kind of lift their game, etc. But, in this case, I think you've got to look at the coaches. You've got to look at the head coach, Gregor Townsend, as well for that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But first of all, we're going to run through the teams, and then we will talk about some stats, and then come back and talk about some general stuff as well. So let me pull the teams up here, and we shall go from there. So we are going to start with the home team. Let me find it here. Yes, we've got the home team, Scotland. And Scotland made 4 changes from the team that played against Italy last week and lost. And those 4 changes are in the pack as well. And then, looking at it, thought maybe they would have made at least one change in the backs, but let's have a look at the team. So fullback is Tom Jordan, right wing Kyle Steyn, centre then Hugh Jones and Sione Tuipulotu, and then you have Jamie Dobie on the wing. So looking at that back line, certainly would have been, maybe a chance to maybe switch Tom Jordan out of 15. I didn't think he was brilliant there. Maybe he's going to be different now. And maybe also just that ability to come into the line and be a second playmaker. But, if you're picking a second playmaker, personally, if Blair Kinghorn is available, I think he'd be in your team rather than Tom Jordan at the minute. I think Tom Jordan, is fine to maybe put him in, at 10, coming off the bench instead of Russell, but it feels like Russell isn't going to get substituted no matter what happens at the minute under Gregor Townsend. So, and at one point you kind of think, you can't really blame him because Russell can produce absolute moments of magic, and he's fantastic 10 as well. Easily one of the best in the Northern Hemisphere, if not the best, especially on his day. But still, sometimes, and looking at last week, I think that was one of those times where they maybe could have made a change. But the wings, then you still got Kyle Steyn and Jamie Dobie, who've been turning up for Glasgow on the wings. Especially Dobie, has just been scoring tries for fun. But put these guys, in a Scotland jersey, and it goes for Jordan as well, and the centres Jones and Tuipulotu, and suddenly, it's almost like that Scotland jersey under Townsend is their kryptonite. Where, if they're wearing this jersey, you could see that back line absolutely tearing teams apart. And especially given that you've also got you got tons of guys there from Glasgow, and you're putting in Finn Russell again, a generational talent, and still, nothing's happening. Like, I think they got like zero. I think they got no breaks against Italy at all. Like, and that was crazy to think. Like, Tuipulotu and Jones, the inform centre pairing in the whole of Europe, I would say. Especially when you think about it, they play together at club level, they play together for Scotland, and it should just be so easy for them, to link up together and make holes in opposition defences. But everyone struggled against Italy. Yes, the conditions are bad, but the conditions were the same for both teams. And, Menoncello didn't really struggle to make an impact in that game, did he? But yeah, looking at the wings, was there a temptation there to, bring Darcy Graham back into the team instead of staying? What about Van der Merwe on that left wing as well? Especially against England, where, there's got to be English players that have some kind of PTSD from playing against that guy, and sometimes that happens, right? Players do well against certain teams, and always seem to score tries against them. So, you wonder how much thought went into that, from the coaches again. But then 9, then you got Ben White there, who, again, a very good player, but you wonder, maybe give Horn a go for this and spring White off the bench, or maybe, Dobie's vacating the wing slot, maybe he's on the bench. I think they could have certainly mixed it up in the backs a little bit. Not doubting the talent of any of the players, but again, just one fresh player in the back line just can make a big difference. But let's see how they go, I think, as a unit. Then into the forwards, where there are a lot of changes. So you got Nathan Macbeth, and George Turner coming in. So, you have Schoeman dropping out from there, and Ewan Ashman out as well. We've also got Grant Gilchrist dropped out of the starting 15, and so did Matt Ferguson as well. So, as I said, the 4 changes are coming here in the in the pack. And for me, well, there's a couple of things looking at this front row. First of all, Schoeman is one of those guys that just really gets the crowd going. So when he is on the bench, we'll come to that in a second, but when he comes off the bench, I think it'll be a big lift for the crowd if the game is close, at least, because the crowd just love shouting "Scoo" anytime he gets the ball as well. And those kind of things actually matter, just in terms of momentum, I think, for your team as well. And then at hooker, George Turner coming in. But then you think, why are the Glasgow hookers being overlooked? You had Johnny Matthews for a long time. Obviously Townsend didn't fancy him, even though he was top try scorer in the URC. But now you've got Hiddleston, who is absolutely tearing up trees. You got Steb Stephen, a young guy who's come in there and looks to the manner born as well. And you would have thought, at least have like Hiddleston in the mix, and kind of the whole thing of a new player on that crest of a wave coming in, I thought, could have really made a difference for them. And, I think a lot of people thought that, when they were kind of underwhelmed, I think, with the hooker choices for the initial Six Nations squad. So, yeah, I wonder if he will come in at some point over the tournament, because generally, front row especially, you're going to get injuries through a tournament like this. But and then maybe we can say we told you so if he does come in and have a great game. But then the second row, then you've got Gregor Brown and Scott Cummings in there. Cummings is a guy I really like, honestly, in the second row. So looking forward to seeing how he goes. The back row, then you got Jamie Ritchie, Rory Darge, and Jack Dempsey there. So Dempsey, the only guy I think out of the starting 15 certainly who come out with any kind of praise. And when we look at the stats later, you'll see why that is. In a team that were again, not on the scoreboard because they only lost by 3 points, but on the field, well beaten. I think he really stood out, as someone who not only was given their all, but was actually making a proper impact for his team as well. Then under replacements, we have Dave Cherry there, and certainly there were question marks about him being picked ahead of Hiddleston for the squad. You got Pierre Schumann, who I think is going to make an impact off the bench. You got Elliot Miller-Mills there. Max Williamson, who unfortunately, didn't make the impact that you would have wanted him to against Italy, but he's a very good player from what I've seen of him running around at URC level. Matt Fagerson is there. George Horn can certainly come on and lift the tempo a little bit from 9 as well. Adam Hastings, but again, is he going to get on? And if he's going to get on, is it going to be kind of as a 12 maybe? You have to see with that, I think. And then Darcy Graham there as well. And, what's the bets on Darcy Graham if it's tight game coming off the bench and putting on some twinkle toes and scoring the winning try? Certainly a possibility, I would say. Next then, we're going to have a look at the England team. So let me pull it up here. So England, I think they made 2 changes to their starting lineup. So front row, Ellis Genge, Luke Cowan-Dickey came in for Jamie George, and then Joe Hayes there as well. So I thought, the front row certainly excellent against Wales. Joe Hayes really is kind of, well, I think he's already there, but he's, turning into kind of a world-class tie head, I think, for England, and yeah, I think with Cowan-Dickey on, it's going to be interesting, I think, with him starting, and then you got George on the bench. So there's a possibility maybe the line out, could be a little bit shaky early on. Will Scotland target that? I know Scotland, well, their line out wasn't very good against Italy, and Italy actually stole 4 of Scotland's line out. So, they've got their own issues there. But Scotland previously used to be, consistently one of the, if not the best, one of the 2 best lineouts in the competition for many years, and especially defensively as well. So can they get back to that level? We'll have to see. Cummings certainly could disrupt that England lineout, but then you got Maro Itoje back as captain, after the sad passing of his mother. So hope everything is okay with him, but he will certainly be looking to make a mess of the Scotland lineout. He's got Ollie Chesham in there as well. I like them as a combination in the second row. The back row, then you got Guy Pepper, Sam Underhill, and Ben Earl. And Ben Earl, one of those guys that when England are on the front foot, looks absolutely amazing. When they're under the cosh a little bit, not so much. But for the most part, they've 12 games won on the bounce, and they have been on the front foot in pretty much all of those games. So, Scotland really will have to kind of keep an eye on him, try and stop him early on, maybe go for a combination, especially when you got the likes of Rory Darge on there. I think go for the chop and poach approach, double team kind of thing. One guy down low, chop him, and then the likes of Darge over the top looking to poach that ball. I think that would probably be the best way to deal with him. I think Pepper has been impressive since he's come into the team as well. But, England have this thing of they very quickly cycle through players, especially compared, I think, to other Six Nations teams. And, the fact that they only made 2 changes and they're beginning to get more settled just tells you the kind of the run of form that they're in. They're no longer really searching for answers, as it were. They're more kind of giving guys chances and seeing can they enhance what is already a very good team. Onto the backs then we have Alex Mitchell at 9, George Ford at 10. Ford at top put in a masterclass last week. And he was of the top 6 kickers, he was number 1, and the other 5 were scrums halves of the other nations. So England kicking more from 10 than any other team. And that's kind of weird because Scotland have changed their tactics. Scotland used to be a heavy kicking team. They used to kick long. They used to, kick through 10 as well, through Russell a lot. They've now gone more to kind of box kicking, through Ben White, looking for those contestables when it feels like other teams, especially France, kind of moved away from the idea of catching clean ball under contestables and more kind of kicking that little bit longer and making it. You saw them do it so effectively against Ireland. Get up there, tap the ball back on your own side, and obviously they trained to be the first to those loose balls because they beat Ireland pretty much every single time. So interesting, the way each team is finding their own kind of way of playing and getting, in some places or instances getting success, and others not so much. Then Henry Arundel got one of the easiest hat tricks in Test rugby against Wales, but the guy is certainly talented and super fast as well. Centres then Fraser Dingwall and Tommy Freeman. I thought though Freeman looked a lot better when he was actually out where he's kind of feels more natural, out in the wide channels on the wing, and his ability as well to either break tackles or drive through contact as well. Very impressive. Tom Roebuck was decent as well last week. And then you have Freddie Stewart, who has kind of, had a bit of like a Lazarus resurrection, really, because if you go back, what was it, a year or two, or maybe, people were saying, he shouldn't be anywhere near the England squad. He's too slow. He turns like an oil tanker, all this kind of stuff. And now, surround him with the right players. And again, he looks $1,000,000. And the fact that you are looking to contest in the air a lot, certainly, plays to his strengths as well. So, but, you think with the backs that England have, there could be some exploiting there. And I'm going to be interested to see if Scotland are going to kick over his head and try and turn him. Because I think that's where, if you do that and you have the likes of Dobie or Stain chasing you up behind that and putting pressure on him, that's where they could get some joy and force some mistakes. I think if they're kicking to him where it's contestable, he's very good in the air. So you're maybe going to build his confidence rather than strip it. I think he struggles when he has to turn or when the ball is kind of bouncing and he has to kind of, go to the ball rather than claim it in the air as well. So be very interested to see what England do on that front. Then on the bench, then we got Jamie George, who I think will come on and probably improve England's line out. Bevan Rodd, who's looked very good off the bench. Trevor Davidson there as well. Then we have Alex Coles, Tom Curry, Henry Pollock, who is box office, and it's not just the attitude and all that kind of stuff. It's his ability as well. He's not one of these guys who is just all talk and no action. He does all the kind of celebrations and the gestures and stuff like that, but he backs it up with his play as well. Although last week he was maybe somewhat lucky that that the penalty try was awarded, and I don't mean that the penalty try shouldn't have been awarded. Absolutely should have been, but he'd blown the try in the first place, and the fact that the penalty try got awarded kind of let him off a little bit off that. But you could argue that maybe if there wasn't that high tackle, that he wouldn't have been touching touching the foot down in touch. Otherwise, like that, he maybe would have just cut down, and obviously that's why the penalty try was awarded. And then you got Ben Spencer there and Finn Smith. So Finn Smith on the bench instead of Marcus Smith. So England looking very settled, and that's always a worry for the other Six Nations team. When England are doing this whole chop and change thing, that they can maybe produce a performance and maybe get a little bit carried away with themselves. But when they've got that kind of settled team of, we know who our best 15 is, and most of the guys who are going to have impact off the bench, and just need to tweak it here and there. It means at least that if you're the opposition, you've got to produce something very special. And looking at the other teams in the Six Nations, you would say France certainly can do it, and can do it in most games. Ireland, certainly question marks whether they can still do it. Scotland have that ability again as a one-off to do it, but I certainly feel like they should be more than just a one-off team. But we're going to have a look now at some of the stats from last week, and then we can talk a little bit more about the teams and the coaches, etc. So let me pull up these stats here. Okay, so we're going to start with some Scotland stats. So Scotland, first for a number of carries, 167, but they got absolutely nothing out of it against Italy. Offloads then joined third with 6. Missed tackles, 6th with 17. So they didn't miss all that many tackles, but Italy were more, more kind of the odd big punch rather than a lot, volume in terms, because they only carried like 84 times in the game. Kicks and play then 6th with 30, and we talked about this before, like 30. Go back to last year, the year before, 30 would have been a lot. And the fact that they're the least amount of kicks tells you something like that. And then also kick meters, 6th with 732. Again, go back a year or two, Scotland regularly kicking over 1,000 meters per game. So they've definitely changed their approach to kicking. As I said, kicking more from 9 and more in terms of contestables. Dominant tackles then 5th with only 6 successful tackles, 6th with 87. But again, Italy didn't have that many carries. Carry meters then 6th with 240, and kicks bounce 6th with 3. So that means only 3 of their kicks actually hit the deck. Like that's from kicks and play. And again, I think that's something that's got to change, because if you're kicking to that England back three, I thought, Freeman also was very good in the air. So you've got Freeman and Stewart and Roebuck there as well. You don't really want them, in the air contesting with, let's say Jamie Dobie or somebody like that. If you had like, if you had maybe Blair Kinghorn, I was going to say Van der Merwe, but Van der Merwe is not very good in the air either, even though he's like massive. But yeah, maybe like with a Kinghorn, you would go for a contestable. But for me, put the ball on the deck, and make, especially again, the likes of Stewart, make them turn, make them chase that ball, not being sure how close the chase is as they're getting to the ball, and kind of that worry of, can I afford to look over the shoulder to see where the guy is that's coming up, and if I do that, am I going to kind of take my eye off the ball at the wrong time and end up knocking on, or maybe even not even knocking on, knocking backwards, and then Scotland guy gets in, dives on the ball and scores a try, something like that. So for me, if I was Scotland coach, certainly I'd be looking for my players to do that. And again, I'd be looking for Finn Russell to kick more. Then breaks, 6th with 0. England will be thinking, oh, that's brilliant. Like, they couldn't make any breaks against Italy. Our defence has been pretty decent recently. So they'll be confident of kind of keeping Scotland quiet. But, I'm pretty sure Scotland are going to make breaks against England as well. It's going to be, I think, about the support and the ability to finish them off if they do. Tackle success then 5th with 77%. Retained kicks percentage was 1st for 26.7. So, they might look at that stat and again think, contestables is the way to go. But I think a mix is the way to go. If the contestables are working, yeah, keep doing those. But again, kick for that grass as well. And kick for potential 50-22s, and also kick to potentially just put pressure on England's lineout as well. Lineout success though 6th at 73.7. Again, like players who are part of one of the most successful lineouts in the URC, and you put them in a Scotland jersey, and that's what happens. And again, that's why I think, lineout failures aren't always on the hooker, but the fact that, hooker was replaced for this game would maybe tell you that that's where certainly some of the blame went. And then meters per carry, just 1.4 at 6th overall. Now, if we look at players, though, for carries, first across every single team was Jack Dempsey with 21. And dominant contacts, 3rd, Jack Dempsey with 5. Turnovers 1, then joint 2nd, Rory Darge and Kyle Stain. So certainly should be competitive at the breakdown. And post-contact meters, 4th overall, Jack Dempsey with 26. So he's absolutely key for Scotland. But the problem is, player performing like that in a game where everyone else around them was not up to the same standard, generally next game going to get targeted. England probably going to see them a lot, double tackling him. Scotland should be expecting that, and they should have a plan about that, where maybe Dempsey initially carries for like the first meter or two, and then before contact gives off a pass, or maybe you're looking for him to offload, and therefore you're going to have those players coming up on the right lines to take advantage of that. So what England do to counter him and what Scotland do to counter that counter certainly will be an interesting part of the game. On to England stats then. So England 7 tries scored, the most of any team last weekend. Obviously have the top try scorer in the tournament with Arundel as well. For carries, they were third with 143. Offload second with 8. But like France were miles ahead of anyone with 21. Defenders beaten second with 29. Line-out steal second with 3. So, a struggling Scotland line-out. And, Italy stole 4 of the line-outs last week. And they're going up against an England team with Itoje now included from the start, who stole 3 lineouts against Wales as well. So certainly going to have to improve majorly on the Scotland side of that. Lineouts won then first with 19. Lineout percentage, second overall with 95. They only lost 1 lineout. Kicks and play first with 42. So whether Scotland are kicking, England are absolutely going to be kicking, and England are going to kick long as well. Kick meters 1,332, first across all of the 6 teams. Dominant contacts in first with 24 as well. So that collision, if Dempsey is the only guy who's winning collision for Scotland, it's going to be a very long afternoon for them. Box kicks then 6 to 8. So again, a contrast there. Scotland kicking more box kicks through Ben White, and then England have completely gone the other way. And it's almost like these two teams have completely reversed their kicking strategy, because again, Scotland used to, for the most part, because every team will box kick, every team will grubber kick, every team will put up Gary Owens, every team will kick long. Every team will kick to try and get 50-22s, etc. But I'm talking about in terms of the dominant approach for a team. So previously, a few years ago, Scotland would have kicked long, and they would have been kicking basically for territory and also for kick chasers to put pressure on the opposition. And so it'd be a mix of basically, let's kick long in around the opposition 22. Therefore, they have line outs close to their own 22 or in their own 22. We'll put pressure on them, maybe force a mistake and get a line out or get a scrum or, turn the ball over or whatever, but we're playing the ball in their half. And then as well as that, it's also, let's kick long to them, keep it in field, put pressure on them so that when they kick out, they don't get much distance coming back. And then we have lineouts just outside their 22 as well. And that's kind of the way that they used to do it. That's the way England are doing it now. And then again, if you switch over, the way England used to do it was from Mitchell, or a lot of 9s as well over the past few years, they would kick contestables and looked to win that ball cleanly, especially with the likes of Stewart, and set up from there and go from there. And now they've gone away from that, and as I said, kicking long through George Ford instead. And Scotland now have taken on that model where they're kind of kicking shorter through Ben White. So, let's see which strategy kind of wins out at the weekend. Carry meters made then second with 556. Post contact meters first with 154. So, Scotland, again, I think they've got to go for that kind of double tackle approach to stop England on that gain line and stop them getting momentum, because once they get that, that kind of Scottish defence at times certainly could disintegrate. Breaks then second with 12. So Scotland made 0 breaks, England made 12. So if it's, even if it tightens up a little bit between the teams, let's say England make 9 or 10 and Scotland make 4 or 5, let's say, still that means that's put a lot of pressure on that Scotland scramble when you have, a lot of speedsters in that England team, both backs and forwards. Tackle success then, first with 88.3. And again, Scotland were fifth with 77. And the only team worse than were Ireland, who missed like 41 tackles against France. And then retained kick percentage, 6 with 14.3. So again, you see, England weren't going for those contestable kicks at all, or again, not as a big proportion, at least of what they were doing. And then meters per carry, second with 3.9. France were first with 4. And if we remember, Scotland's meters per carry was 1.4. So England on average per carry, carrying 2.5 meters more than Scotland. So that again is a big ask for Scotland to close the gap. And then meters per kick, they were first with 33.7. So again, talking about England kicking long, using the pace that they have in their team to put massive pressure on the opposition. And you can see maybe if Scotland don't change their tactics, Scotland losing a lot of those kicking duels as well. So let's talk generally then about the teams. England, as I said, 12 on the bounce. Going to be supremely confident coming into this game. And, at the moment, everyone is just looking already, I think, to that final weekend, England versus France, for that potential Grand Slam decider. And, for England at the minute, Scotland, they're obviously concentrating on Scotland at the minute, but they will also have that vision of yes, we want to beat Scotland, but we want to beat them as part of a run at the title as well. Whereas Scotland at the minute, I think, are more, I think, living in the moment, given poor performance against Italy. I'm amazed, honestly, that the coach survived that. And it's a weird one, I think, for a Scotland fan, because obviously you want your team to win, and that never changes, right? But at the same time, if your team loses, then there might be that benefit of, well, maybe this is finally the last straw for the SRU, and they realize that they've got to make a change. But that's more of a consolation prize where, your focus is on, we hope the team wins by hook or by crook. But I think that's what it is for Scotland in a minute, is it's by hook or by crook. I think if you put Glasgow in this game, they would run England a lot closer than Scotland at the minute. That's being completely honest. And then there's one final thing in this game as well, is that the Rayburn Shield, which is this thing, it's been around for years, but some guy apparently has actually made a physical representation of it, because it was always just a notional thing. And it's basically a notional winner stays on world champion. And it's, it's basically, it was basically like, the first World Cup winner, and then they're kind of this Rayburn Shield world champions, and the next team to beat them then kind of takes the title off them, and then it goes on from there, right? If you're the title holder and somebody beats you, the title passes to them. Like, again, it's just all notional, but it's kind of an interesting thing, I think, to have in rugby. Obviously, it doesn't mean anything in terms of, the actual world champions are South Africa. But it's something, because this guy is doing, I think it's on TikTok or somewhere, he's doing this. It's actually getting more exposure to something that's been around in the game for a very long time, but never really had any kind of wider recognition, even within the game. But, apparently he went to the England-Wales game, and afterwards they let him in to the stadium with it, like not during the match, but after the game. And he got to talk to some of the players and stuff. So that's just an interesting little side thing, like, and maybe some motivation for Scotland as well, that they could actually, take that off England and deny them. But I think for Scots, they don't need too much motivation to try and beat England, and they've done it so often in recent years. But at the minute, I think it's a massive ask for them. I do weirdly have a kind of a feeling that Scotland are going to produce something this weekend. But in terms of my prediction, I'm going to stick my head and I'm going to say England to win.